Welcome to the Thinking Abyss podcast, a philosophical journey through consciousness, reality, and the phenomena that challenge our understanding of existence. From ancient wisdom to cutting-edge theories, we explore where philosophy meets science and curiosity leads to the edge of the unknown.
What if the most cherished memory you hold, the solid ground beneath your feet, even the immutable laws of physics that govern every breath you take? What if it all exists only as lines of code?
Running on a machine that you can't even begin to imagine.
It's a wild thought.
It is. And today, we're pulling on that thread, a thread that, if it unwinds completely, could unravel the very fabric of everything you believe about reality. We're getting into the simulation hypothesis.
It's a proposition that is just so profound, almost vertigo-inducing.
Absolutely. It makes you question the very nature of your own existence.
Our mission today is pretty clear. We've gone through the core sources on this, especially the work of philosopher Nick Bostrom, and we really want to pull out the most important pieces for you.
Right. We want to understand his argument, the physics that might support it, and of course the huge moral and logical rabbit holes it opens up.
The goal is for you to walk away with a real grasp of why this isn't just, science fiction fodder anymore. It's a serious challenge to modern science and philosophy.
It is. And what's so fascinating, and what we'll really get into, is that this hypothesis isn't just grounded in old philosophy, like Plato's cave or the concept of Maya.
Which we will touch on.
Oh, for sure. But the key is that it's grounded in real-world technology that we can already see on the horizon.
Advanced VR, massive supercomputers.
Exactly. We're already simulating complex things. So the question becomes, if we can see a path to building a perfect digital world ourselves, what are the odds we're not already living inside one someone else built?
That's the question. Okay, so this core intuition that reality might be fake, it feels like such a modern digital age anxiety. But the roots of this skepticism they're ancient. They go back millennia.
Oh, absolutely. These ancient echoes of illusion, you find them everywhere. It's this persistent human worry that our senses are, lying to us.
And the most famous example, at least in the West, has to be Plato's allegory of the cave.
Right, from around 380 BC. For anyone who needs a refresher, Plato imagines these prisoners who've been chained up since birth, just facing a wall.
Their whole lives just staring at a wall.
Their whole lives. And behind them, there's a fire, and people are parading objects in front of it, which casts shadows on the wall the prisoners are facing.
So the shadows are all they've ever known. That is their reality.
It's their entire reality. They name the shadows, they discuss their behavior, they predict their movements, but they're just projections. Two-dimensional, lower fidelity versions of the real three-dimensional objects behind them.
And the true reality, the world outside the cave, is something they can't even conceive of.
Completely unaware. So the concept is baked right in there. What we see and touch might just be an imperfect reflection of a truer underlying reality.
And it's not just the Greeks. If you look east to classical Indian philosophy, you have the concept of Maya in both Hinduism and Buddhism.
Right. Maya is essentially the material world. It's this vast, complex, dazzling deception that we all accept as fundamental.
But it's seen as a distraction, right? Something that prevents you from seeing the true reality.
Exactly. It's an elaborate, highly convincing illusion that stands in the way of spiritual enlightenment. For thousands of years, entire cultures have internalized this idea that our daily experience is, in some fundamental way, not the real deal.
Then you jump forward to the 17th century. We're at the dawn of modern rationalism, and René Descartes basically picks up the same thread.
He does. He's the one who asks those famous questions. How do I know I'm not dreaming right now? How can I be certain that any of this is real?
He takes it to a pretty wild extreme with the evil demon idea.
Yes, this hypothetical, supremely powerful being whose entire purpose is just to deceive him. The demon fabricates every single sensation, the warmth from the fire, the sight of his own hands, everything.
And the only thing he can't doubt is the fact that he is doubting.
Cogito ergo sum. I think, therefore I am. The act of thinking proves the existence of the thinker, even if everything that thinker perceives is a lie.
So this feeling, this deep-seated anxiety that we're being deceived, it's been with us for as long as we've been thinking critically. But this is where the modern idea, this is where it really changes the game.
It really does. We move from a metaphysical demon to a technological programmer.
And that's the core of Nick Bostrom's argument from his 2003 paper, right?
Precisely. The huge difference between Descartes' demon and Bostrom's simulation is that Bostrom's idea doesn't require any supernatural beings or, acts of malice. It doesn't require any leap of faith.
It's just an extrapolation of technology.
It's built entirely on a clear trajectory of technology that we are already on. We just have to assume it continues.
So let's talk about that trajectory. How close are we really to simulating something as complex as a conscious reality?
Well, think about where we are right now. Look at the photorealism in modern video games. Some of those environments are basically indistinguishable from a movie.
Or VR headsets. They can completely trick your brain. You can get a genuine physiological response, like vertigo, from something your rational mind knows isn't real.
That's sensory deception on a mass scale. And crucially, we're not just simulating things for entertainment. We use massive supercomputers to model incredibly complex real-world systems.
Like climate change or galaxy formation.
Right. We simulate molecular interactions to design new drugs. We're already building these small, limited, but highly detailed little simulated universes that are designed to mirror our own.
And the power to do this is growing exponentially.
It is. Even if something like Moore's law slows down for silicon chips, we've got quantum computing, biological computing. Entirely new paradigms are on the way. If that computational power keeps growing, it seems almost inevitable that a future civilization could create what Bostrom calls ancestor simulations.
And we're not just talking about a really good video game here.
Not at all. These would be simulations so detailed, so high resolution, that the beings inside them would develop emergent consciousness.
And they would have no idea.
Completely unaware that their entire history, their laws of physics, their deepest thoughts, were all just software.
Which brings us to the really unsettling question. If we can accept that this is possible,
then how do we know it hasn't happened already? How do we know we aren't one of those simulated consciousnesses running on some advanced hardware in a higher reality?
And that's where Bostrom's trilemma comes in. He argues this isn't just a possibility, it's a logical conclusion. He frames it as a three-pronged argument where at least one of the options must be true.
Right, there's no escape. That's the disturbing elegance of it. It forces you into an existential corner, and none of the three options are particularly comforting.
Not at all. They immediately challenge everything we think we know about our past and our future. So let's lay them out. Option one is the doomed civilization.
Yes. The proposition here is quite simple and quite bleak. It's that almost all civilizations at our stage of development, or just a little bit beyond, go extinct.
They wipe themselves out before they can ever reach the technological stage where they could run these mass ancestor simulations.
Exactly. They self-terminate before reaching what you could call computational maturity. It suggests that there's a great filter in our near future.
And that filter could be anything. Nuclear war, climate collapse, a designer pandemic, runaway AI.
Any number of self-inflicted catastrophes. We basically get the power to destroy ourselves long before we get the power to simulate ourselves on a massive scale.
So if this option is true, then humanity is probably doomed.
The odds are overwhelmingly high, yes. It would explain the great silence out there in the cosmos. The reason we don't see a universe teeming with super advanced civilizations running simulations is because basically no one makes it that far.
That's a heavy thought. It puts a lot of pressure on the next couple of centuries.
That certainly does. It frames our immediate future as this make-or-break moment for our entire species.
Okay, that's a tough one to swallow. Let's move to option two, the unlikely restraint.
So this option assumes civilizations do survive that great filter. They achieve the technological capacity to run these simulations, but they all choose not to.
A kind of universal, voluntary restraint.
Yes. And there could be a few reasons for this. Maybe once a species becomes post-biological, uploads their consciousness or becomes a super intelligent AI, they just lose interest in their messy biological past.
Why simulate war and disease when you exist in some perfect state?
Exactly. Or, and this is a big one, maybe there are profound ethical concerns.
The idea that it's fundamentally wrong to create conscious beings and trap them in a reality where they're guaranteed to suffer and die, all without their consent.
Right. Maybe there are universal taboos or cosmic laws that prevent it. It becomes an act of unimaginable cruelty.
I have to say, this is the one option that seems plausible to me. Bostrom calls it unlikely. But if a civilization gets that advanced, wouldn't their ethical framework also advance? Why does he assume they'd still have our chaotic, messy motivations?
That's an excellent point, and it's where this statistical argument comes in. Bostrom's defense is that for this option to be true, every single capable civilization across all of time and space has to come to the same conclusion. Uniformly. There can be no outliers. And just think about the diversity of motivations here on Earth right now. You have scientists, artists, governments, corporations, bored teenagers in their basements.
It only takes one.
It only takes one. One curious civilization, one rogue faction, one state-sponsored historical research project to decide to run simulations. And once they start, they could run billions of them. The sheer scale of the universe makes universal restraint seem statistically very, very improbable.
So if we discard option 1, that we're doomed, and we discard option 2, that everyone is strangely restrained, we're left with option 3.
The statistical certainty. This is the bombshell, the one that gets all the headlines.
That we are almost certainly living inside a computer simulation right now.
Yes, and the logic, again, is just based on pure numbers. If civilizations survive, and even a fraction of them choose to run simulations, then the number of simulated realities will inevitably and astronomically outnumber the one single base reality.
So let's just imagine one advanced civilization in that base reality, Earth Prime, let's call it.
Okay, Earth Prime.
They decide to run, say, 1 million ancestor simulations to study their history.
1 million different versions. Maybe they tweak the laws of physics in one or see what happens if a different decision was made in another.
Right. And then within each of those million simulations, the simulated people eventually get advanced enough to run their own simulations.
And you get layers within layers. The number of conscious beings in that single original base reality is tiny compared to the trillions upon trillions of simulated beings living in all the layers below it.
So the odds that you, the person listening right now, just happen to be in the one and only original non-simulated reality.
They become vanishingly small. 1 in a billion, 1 in a trillion. It's just a straightforward application of probability.
So there it is, the trilemma. We're either doomed, universally and strangely restrained, or we're probably code. And Bostrom's point is that one of those has to be right.
So let's assume for a minute that option 3 is the most likely. If we are simulated, the first and biggest objection everyone has is the scale of it all.
Right. I can hear people thinking it now. How could any computer possibly simulate this entire universe? There are, 10 to the power of 80 particles?
Something like that, in the observable universe. And each one have quantum states that you'd have to track and calculate in real time. The computational requirements just seem astronomical, beyond anything we could ever imagine.
It seems infinite.
It does. But this is where the key defense of the hypothesis comes in. Optimization. The system wouldn't have to simulate everything all at once in perfect detail.
It would use rendering on demand.
Precisely. Think of it exactly like a high-end video game. Your computer isn't rendering every leaf on every tree on the far side of the map.
No, it only renders my immediate surroundings in high definition. The rest of the world is just kind of held in a low-res state, or maybe just as a set of mathematical possibilities until I get closer.
That is the perfect analogy. A sufficiently advanced simulation would run our cosmos like the ultimate game engine. Distant galaxies, or even the inside of a rock that nobody's looking at, could just exist as simplified equations, placeholders.
The system only does the heavy computational lifting when a conscious observer, like one of us, actually directs our attention to something.
Exactly. When we perform a measurement or make an observation, why waste processing cycles calculating the exact position of an electron that nobody is looking at?
And this is where it gets really mind-blowing, because this idea, it offers a potential solution to the biggest mystery in modern physics, quantum mechanics.
This is the elegant connection. For a century, quantum mechanics has been telling us that at the subatomic level, particles don't really have definite properties until we measure them. They exist in this fuzzy cloud of probabilities.
Superposition. Schrodinger's cat, which is famously both alive and dead until someone opens the box.
Right. And the central weirdness is that the very act of observation, of measurement, seems to force reality to make a choice. The wave function collapses, and the particle instantly snaps into one definite state.
Why does looking at something change what it is? That's the fundamental question.
And the simulation hypothesis offers this unnervingly simple explanation. It's a feature, not a bug. It's a computational optimization.
So the universe's operating system doesn't bother calculating the precise values for everything all the time because that would be incredibly wasteful.
It just keeps them as probabilities.
Yeah.
And then when a conscious entity, which is probably a very expensive thing to run in the simulation, demands a definite answer by looking, the system is forced to spend the cycles to render the result. And poof, The wave function collapses.
That's a huge reframing. It takes this deep metaphysical mystery and turns it into a practical resource management decision.
It really does. And beyond quantum mechanics, there are other features of our universe that start to look a bit suspicious, like they were deliberately designed to make a simulation run efficiently.
Built-in limits.
Exactly. Built-in limits and quantization. You can almost see the structure of the program showing through.
So let's talk about those. First, the speed of light.
The speed of light. It's the universal speed limit. Nothing can travel faster. No information can be transferred faster.
Why would that be useful for a simulation?
Well, think of the simulation running on a huge distributed network of processors. If information could travel instantly from one side of the universe to the other, the system would have a nightmare of a time keeping everything synchronized.
Things would get out of sync.
Catastrophically so. The speed of light acts as a built-in latency regulator. It ensures that cause and effect propagate at a manageable speed, giving all the different processors time to update and maintain a consistent state across the whole simulation.
Okay, that makes sense. And then there's the Planck length, which is an even more direct hint of a digital reality.
Yes. The Planck length is the smallest meaningful unit of distance in our universe. It's about 10 to the minus 35 meters. Below that scale, our laws of physics just break. They stop making sense.
So you can't just keep dividing space into smaller and smaller chunks forever.
It seems not. And if reality were truly continuous, infinitely divisible, simulating it would require infinite computational resources.
But if it's quantized, if it's made of tiny, irreducible packets, then it's finite.
Exactly. The Planck length acts just like the pixel size on a screen, or the smallest point on a grid. The system only has to calculate down to that level of detail. It's the ultimate resolution limit of our cosmic display. And its existence is incredibly convenient if you're trying to write an efficient program for universe.
So if we are running on software, the natural next step is to start looking for bugs, for those, glitches in the matrix.
Right, and this is where the speculation gets really fun, but also where we need to be careful. The idea of finding artifacts and bugs is really appealing.
People talk about the Mandela effect all the time.
They do. This idea that large groups of people share the same very specific false memory, like remembering the Berenstain Bears being spelled with an E-I-N.
And the argument is that this is evidence of reality being edited or patched, and not everything got updated correctly.
Or déjà vu, that sudden jarring feeling that you've lived this exact moment before. Is that a system error? A patch loading incorrectly?
But what's the more mundane explanation?
The problem is, we have really solid, non-simulation-based explanations for all of this. Human memory is just notoriously unreliable. It's highly reconstructive. The Mandela effect is almost certainly down to things like common misspellings, cultural assumptions, and good old confirmation bias.
And déjà vu.
That's very likely a tiny misfire in the brain's temporal lobe, where the parts of your brain that process new experiences and retrieve memories get out of sync for just a split second. It makes a new moment feel like an old memory.
So probably not a glitch in the code.
Probably not. But this speculation has pushed serious physicists to propose actual, rigorous experiments. They're trying to find ways to detect the underlying architecture of this supposed code.
And one of the main ideas is to look for a 3D lattice structure.
Right. If our reality is running on a discrete grid, like a cosmic pixel array, that grid might impose a subtle directionality on the laws of physics.
How on earth would you test for that?
By looking at ultra-high energy cosmic rays as they travel across the universe. If there's a grid, these rays might behave just slightly differently, depending on whether they're traveling along the X, Y, or Z axis of that grid.
So you're looking for a preferred direction in the universe.
A tiny but measurable anomaly. It would be like trying to find the orientation of the monitor that our universe is being displayed on. Finding that would be, well, revolutionary.
What about looking for signatures in the constants of physics themselves?
That's another idea. That if our universe was programmed, then the fundamental constants, the strength of gravity, the mass of an electron, weren't chosen at random.
They were chosen for computational convenience.
Maybe. A good programmer might use clean numbers or specific ratios that make the calculations more stable or efficient. So we'd be looking for strange, non-random mathematical patterns in those fundamental numbers.
But so far, nothing's turned up.
Nothing convincing. But of course, the counterargument is always there.
That a truly advanced simulation would be programmed to hide its own nature perfectly.
Exactly. Any glitch we find could be patched in real time. The true artifacts of the system might be fundamentally inaccessible to the beings running inside it.
Which brings us to the hardest question of all. If we are simulated, Are we actually conscious? Or are we just incredibly complex philosophical zombies?
This is the absolute core of it, the philosophical battleground. On one side, you have the functionalist view, which says, yes, of course we're conscious.
And that's the idea of substrate independence.
Right. Functionalism argues that consciousness is just a pattern of information processing. It doesn't matter what that pattern is running on.
Carbon-based neurons or silicon-based chips.
It makes no difference. If a program perfectly models a human brain, all 86 billion neurons, all the trillions of connections, then that program is conscious. The hardware, the substrate, is irrelevant. Consciousness emerges from the function, not the material.
But there's a strong counter-view to that.
There is. The view that consciousness might require some specific physical property of biological matter that you simply can't replicate in a purely computational system.
Like some subtle quantum effect happening inside our neurons.
Perhaps. The argument is that even a perfect computer model of a brain would just be a hollow imitation. It would perform all the mechanics of thought, but there would be nobody home. It wouldn't actually feel the redness of red or the pain of grief. It would lack qualia as subjective experience.
And the answer to that question has just massive moral implications.
Astronomical. Because if simulated beings are genuinely conscious, then the simulators bear an incredible moral responsibility.
You're talking about creating trillions of beings capable of immense suffering, maybe just for an experiment or for entertainment.
Are they obligated to intervene, to patch out suffering? Does shutting down the simulation constitute an act of genocide on a scale we can't even comprehend?
An instant annihilation of billions of conscious lives.
It leads to this idea of a golden rule across the layers of reality. How we decide to treat our own future simulations should reflect how we would want our simulators to be treating us right now.
It's a huge ethical weight.
It is. And that ethical weight just gets heavier when you consider the possibility of nested realities.
The idea of simulations all the way down. If we're in a simulation, couldn't our creators also be in a simulation?
And their creators, and so on. Now, logically, you have to assume there is, at some point, a base reality, an original physical universe that's not simulated.
The server room at the top of the stack.
Exactly. But statistically, the vast majority of all conscious beings would exist somewhere in the middle layers. We would be simulated, but also capable of creating our own lower fidelity simulations.
And the consequence of that is just a total demolition of our sense of importance.
It's the ultimate philosophical deflation. Everything we consider fundamental, the laws of physics, the constants of nature, the flow of time, might just be arbitrary parameters.
Settings on a dashboard in the layer above us.
Right? They could change the strength of gravity tomorrow if they wanted to. They could pause us, rewind us, run 1,000 different versions of the 21st century to see which one works out best. Our reality is just their customizable environment.
It's impossible not to see the religious parallels here.
Oh, they're unavoidable. The simulators are, for all intents and purposes, gods. They exist outside our reality. They're all powerful within it. And they created our universe.
Some people have run with this, saying the hypothesis is a kind of modern scientific framework for religious ideas. Base reality is heaven, our simulation is a pest.
It's an easy leap to make, but we have to be clear. The hypothesis explains a possible mechanism for our existence, not the meaning or purpose.
Our creators could just be bored teenagers.
Or inscrutable AIs running an optimization problem we can't comprehend. There's no guarantee they're benevolent or that they care about us at all.
Which raises that nihilistic challenge again. If it's all just a program, does simulated suffering matter less?
I think most philosophers would argue a powerful no. Your lived experience is real to you.
The pain is real. The joy is real.
The love, the loss, the struggle. The meaning is inherent in the experience itself, regardless of the substrate. A simulated pain still hurts. A simulated joy is still wonderful. The quality of your conscious experience isn't diminished just because it's running on silicon instead of stardust.
Okay, so despite the elegance of all this, we have to be intellectually honest and look at the major roadblocks, the strong counter-arguments that keep this in the realm of speculation.
Absolutely. And the first one is still the most practical. Computational absurdity.
Just the sheer brute force difficulty of it all.
Right. Even with all the optimization tricks, simulating billions of conscious brains interacting in real time, plus the rest of the universe for context, the energy and computational requirements are just staggering. Some argue it would take more resources to simulate our universe than exist in the base universe, which is a paradox.
And what about the quantum limits? You mentioned them earlier.
Yes, some physicists argue that quantum mechanics itself might make a perfect simulation impossible. For instance, the no cloning theorem says you can't make a perfect copy of an unknown quantum state.
So the programmers couldn't save a backup file of the universe.
Not a perfect one, no. And the fact that measuring a system always disturbs it introduces a fundamental uncertainty that might be impossible to model in a stable, deterministic way. These quantum rules might be an absolute barrier.
Then there's the big scientific critique, unfalsifiability.
This is a major one. A good scientific theory has to be falsifiable. There must be some experiment you could run that could prove it wrong.
And with the simulation hypothesis, there really isn't one.
Not really. Any evidence against it, any lack of glitches, any failure to find that cosmic lattice can just be explained away, oh, the programmers are just really good at hiding it. It moves it out of science and into the realm of pure philosophical conjecture.
And finally, the infinite regress problem,
which we touched on. It doesn't solve the ultimate question of existence. It just kicks the can up a level. Okay, we were created by simulators. Well, who created their reality? Why does base reality exist at all? It doesn't answer the fundamental, why is there something rather than nothing question.
These are all really strong points that keep things uncertain. But there's one last idea we have to discuss, and it's maybe the most unsettling of all: the anthropic shadow.
This is a devastating catch-22, a paradox that suggests we might be fundamentally prevented from ever knowing the truth.
What's the logic?
The logic goes like this. If most advanced civilizations shut down their simulations, the moment the simulated beings figure out they're in a simulation.
Maybe because it contaminates the experiment or it's an ethical line they won't cross.
Right. If that's the case, then we are, by definition, living in one of the timelines where we haven't found the proof yet.
Right.
Because any timeline where the proof was found was immediately terminated.
So we can only exist in a state of ignorance.
We are anthropically selected to only exist as long as the evidence remains hidden. The very fact that we are here, having this conversation, might be the strongest evidence that we haven't found the smoking gun. Because if we had, we wouldn't be here.
The proof of the simulation is also its termination signal. That's a chilling thought.
It's a perfect trap.
So after all of this, what does it all mean? For you, listening right now, we've gone through Bostrom's 3 paths. We're either doomed, uniquely restrained, or almost certainly simulated.
We've seen how the weirdness of quantum physics finds a strange, elegant explanation in the language of computation. And we've looked at the very real scientific and philosophical roadblocks that keep this as a probability, not a fact.
Where we land is in a state of profound uncertainty. And maybe that's okay.
I think it is. The hypothesis is unproven, but it's logically powerful. And maybe its greatest value is just forcing us to admit how little we really know about the fundamental nature of our reality. It's a deeply humbling realization, just like when we discovered we weren't the center of the universe.
But the practical takeaway here is vital. This idea does not require you to be a nihilist. Your choices, your relationships, your desire to live a meaningful life, all of that still has value, whether you're made of atoms or algorithms.
Yes, the information, the pattern, the experience, that's what's real. A simulated pain is still painful. A simulated joy is still joyful. The quality of your life is not diminished just because the substrate might be different from what you thought it was.
The value of this whole conversation might not be in proving we're simulated, but just in forcing us to ask better, deeper questions about what consciousness and existence even are.
And that brings us to our final provocative thought for you to chew on. If we accept the statistical argument that we're likely in a simulation, and we accept the unsettling logic of the anthropic shadow, that finding conclusive proof might instantly end our existence.
Should we keep looking for it?
Exactly. Should we as a species keep funding and running experiments that are specifically designed to prove we live inside a machine, when the price of finding that ultimate truth might be our immediate and total annihilation?